The Buffalo Bills make 2 trades last night, ultimately exiting the first round. Should we grab our pitchforks or pitchers of beer? Let's talk about it. You're watching Buffalo Live.
Buffalo Bills football.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Buffalo Live, your one-stop shop for live, professional, play-by-play reaction to every Buffalo Bills game, plus NFL draft talk. Day 1 is in the books, and holy cow, was it awesome. Lots of drama both inside the Buffalo Bills camp and outside as well. We're going to be breaking down all of it on today's show. We'll start off by talking about these 2 trades that the Bills made and what kind of impact, what we can expect from the Bills today on day 2. We will take a brief look at the rest of the NFL and how the draft fell for them. And specifically, we'll look at the Kansas City Chiefs and what they got in Xavier Worthy, since it was a pick, after all, that the Bills traded to them. So let's get into it. Let's start with what happened. So Bills are sitting there at 28. They trade to the Kansas City Chiefs the 28th pick, a 4th rounder, and a 7th rounder in exchange for the Chiefs' 32nd overall pick. That's a first rounder, a 3rd rounder, and a 7th. So essentially, the Bills moved up to the 3rd round of the draft, and they switched 7ths. So that was the exchange that the Bills got on that trade. And if you look at the Jimmy Johnson draft chart, it equals to a, a surplus in favor of the Bills of 12.5 points. Then we take a look at the next trade that happened. So the Bills are now sitting at 32nd, and they trade the 32nd overall pick to the Carolina Panthers in addition to a 6th in exchange for the 33rd overall pick, top of the 2nd, and a 5th round pick. So the Bills move up from the 6th round to the 5th round, just trading 1 spot. That is a point surplus in favor of the Bills of 14.1 points. If you add that value that they got out of that trade plus the one they got out of the Chiefs trade, the total amount of points there is 26.6 points. Now, what is that equivalent of? Well, that is the equivalent of a late 5th round pick. That's essentially what Brandon Beane got out of these 2 trades that he made, was a brand new late 5th round pick. So you might hear that and want to freak out. You might hear that and think that's great. There's a lot of guys freaking out on the internet and on the radio today, but let's really break this down and see what kind of moves that Beane and the Bills can make now that we have this and now that we're in this position. So first of all, we take those 26.6 points, right? That late 5th rounder, early 6th rounder. That's kind of what that is valued as. And you can do a number of things with it as far as trading up goes. When we look at the later rounds, you're obviously going to be able to trade up further with later round draft picks than earlier round draft picks. So you can take that 5th rounder that you got through these trades, and you can trade up from the late 7th and go all the way to a late 5th. That's what kind of value these trades has resulted in, okay? You can take the Bills' early 7th and go mid-5th. You can take the Bills' late 6th round pick and go to the late 4th, okay? Now let's get into kind of sooner in the draft. The Bills have a late 4th rounder. They can trade this 5th round pick that they've essentially acquired through these trades and move up into the early to mid 4th. Okay, so you're only moving up, half a round if you get to the 4th. When you're talking about the late 3rd rounder that the Bills possess, now you're talking about only 7 spots. Okay, you talk about the late 2nd round pick that the Bills own, you're talking about just moving up 3 spots. So that's what the Bills will be able to use with this new pick that they've acquired. Now, what really sucks about this trade that they made with the Panthers is they will not be able to use the fifth-year option that you would be able to use for a player you draft in the first round. So you can only have that fifth-year option in the first round. Now that they're picking in the second, that doesn't exist. Fifth-year options in these NFL contracts are useful. Several guys that we just saw had their fifth-year options picked up recently. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell, Patrick Surtain, Micah Parsons, Jalen Phillips. So it's been said that you can only, or they're really only useful for quarterbacks. That's not true. Other teams are using these fifth-year options for other positions. So it's really just a tool that any NFL organization can keep in their back pocket in order to leverage, some negotiation going on between a player you've drafted in the first and how much you want to pay them and when you want to pay them, how many years you want. It's just another tool to kind of maybe prolong the conversation. Now, some teams don't even need to use a fifth-year option, just like the Eagles and Devontae Smith, right? They went ahead and signed him to a 3-year extension earlier last week, but the Miami Dolphins did not. They actually picked up Jalen Waddle's fifth-year option. Those two players drafted in the same draft. So the Bills will not be able to use that tool. So I am, kind of upset about that. Other reasons to be upset, if you are someone as a Bills fan who is really looking for a wide receiver to be drafted, is there were 3 receivers drafted between where the Bills were supposed to pick and now where they're picking at 33rd overall, which are obviously Xavier Worthy, who went to the Chiefs, Xavier Legette, who went to the Carolina Panthers, and in between them, Ricky Pearsall, who went to the 49ers. So you've got 3 wide receivers that the Bills now have no ability to take. They are with those 3 teams. Just a quick thought on some of these guys. Xavier Worthy, I will talk about him later. I never thought he'd be a great pick for the Bills as a first rounder, maybe a second rounder, but scheme-wise, I just was looking for someone else. If the Bills wanted to take him in the third or early third or later in the draft, I would have been happy with that, just given, what he's able to do with his speed. But in terms of really the need of where the Bills are at with their roster, I never thought that Worthy was going to be a great fit for a first round or second round value. So I'm okay with him, honestly, going to a different team, even if it is the Chiefs. Xavier Legette, this is Joe Marino's guy, big physical player. Definitely could have seen the Bills taking him late second round. I don't know how great a pick it would have been at 28 or 32nd for that matter. But he goes to the Panthers, and Ricky Pearsall was a guy who I definitely think was would have been a great pick for that second rounder, not so much the first. 49ers take him, which really leads people to believe that they're going to move on from the talk now is Deebo Samuel. It used to be Brandon Ayuk, and now it's shifted to the 49ers thinking about trading Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is someone who is a little bit older than Ayuk. I think he's 28. Ayuk is 25, around there. So they're wanting to. I kind of predicted this earlier. I figured they would want to get rid of the older guy before he, drops and declines in his career due to age, versus the new up and coming guy who's shown a lot of promise. So, with that said, I wanted to bring up guys I like on the board. Now that the Bills are sitting there at the top of the second, 33rd overall pick, to me, the best player left on the board, the best value you're going to get for this pick is Cooper DeJean, not sure how his last name's pronounced. So the Bills could stick and pick at 33rd and get Cooper DeJean. He is a plug-and-play starter, and if you draft him, this gives you the chance to choose between Mike Edwards or Taylor Rapp. And this is great because both of those guys, really haven't asserted themselves as, quality starters in the league yet. I would say they're definitely quality depth, but just not quite there at that next level. They have very similar stats. They've played in a similar amount of games. They have similar cap hits next year, each at $2.8 million. Similar amount of interceptions and pass deflections. Now, Taylor Rapp actually has 150 more total tackles. And so I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because I see the guy who has less, and I'm wondering, well, is he getting less tackles because teams are not throwing to him as much or running in his direction as much? So, but if the Bills draft Cooper DeJean, then that will give them the chance to let those guys duke it out in training camp and just pick who they're more comfortable with playing alongside DeJean. I really think he's a plug-and-play starter. Guys I would prefer, later, if you're drafting at 33rd overall, I honestly would rather the Bills trade back or use their second pick in the second round to draft all the receivers that are available, whether it's Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell, Keon Coleman, Troy Franklin, Roman Wilson, Malachi Corley. Those are not players that I would value at 33rd overall. Now, if they want to, again, I mentioned last week before the draft, maybe the Bills can trade back to trade up. I could see that happening and get much better value on your pick than just sticking and picking 33rd overall with these guys. Now let's talk about combinations that I would be thrilled about if the Bills could pull this off. If the Bills can do one of the following options, you would have to be excited as a Bills fan. I know I would at least. So let's talk about guys that are kind of on the market that aren't prospects. First of all, T. Higgins, right? T. Higgins has been talked about and rumored as a trade tool for the Cincinnati Bengals. If the Bills can snag T. Higgins, and even if they can get just a third-tier receiver, someone like Keon Coleman, someone like Jalen Polk, Troy Franklin, right? One of those guys to pair with T. Higgins, I'm a happy camper, okay? Same thing with Deebo Samuel. If the Bills can grab Deebo Samuel and get a third-tier wide receiver, I would love that as well. I would prefer Higgins over Samuel just because he's younger. Both are excellent receivers that would make an immediate impact on this offense, okay? How about Cooper DeJean plus a second-tier wide receiver? Now, when I say second-tier, really the only two guys I'm talking about are Adonai Mitchell or Ladd McConkey. For me, those two receivers are on a tier above the rest of the guys that are left on the board. So if the Bills can somehow draft Cooper DeJean and get McConkey or Mitchell, I'd be thrilled. How about two second-tier wide receivers? If the Bills can find a way to pull off grabbing Mitchell and McConkey, I would be thrilled. How about Odell Beckham Jr., who's still on the market? If the Bills can grab him plus Mitchell or McConkey, a lot to be excited about there. Combinations I would not be thrilled about. Cooper DeJean plus a third-tier guy. So if the Bills get Cooper DeJean and Keon Coleman, that doesn't really do enough for me to get me excited about this offense. If the Bills grab a one second-tier wide receiver, so that's Mitchell or McConkey, and then a fourth tier, these are guys like Ryan Flournoy or Anaya Smith or just someone we haven't heard about. To me, that's really not enough to get me excited. Another combination is two third-tier wide receivers, either Brendan Rice or Roman Wilson. If the Bills only pull that off, not super pumped about that. So, in conclusion, what really would get me excited is getting at least one of these second-tier guys and, maybe a Cooper DeJean, maybe OBJ, maybe both of these guys, McConkey and Mitchell. That would be awesome. Really, really awesome. So, as far as the rest of the draft goes, I want to kind of take a look at what took place beyond the Buffalo Bills' universe. So, offensive players, holy cow. I mean, they set a record last night with the most amount of players on offense drafted in the first round, most consecutive from, pick number 1 to pick 15 or whatever it was. So teams around the league are asking themselves, why prevent points when we can just score more? You got to keep up with everyone else. The rules are changing so much nowadays. They're so conducive to scoring points and less conducive to defenses. And, there's a brand new rule out this year that's going to be imposed that in regards to drop hip tackling. Another reason why we really got to value wide receivers that are fast and can get in front of guys as opposed to the old ways of doing, defenses, big hulky linebackers. And I think teams are looking at how the league is shifting in terms of rules and saying to themselves, we have to be one of those teams that that's able to score 50 points. And so lots of quarterbacks, wide receivers, tackles drafted in order to make that happen. Now, I want to talk about Atlanta. Atlanta was the story of the night, in my opinion, drafting Michael Penix Jr. at 9th overall when I thought it was a lock that they would take Dallas Turner. I have a Falcons friend of mine who unofficially retired his allegiance as a Falcons fan. And I really sought to rationalize what the Falcons did here. The more I think about it, it really is a shocker that they did this. But I want to look at guys who didn't have to come in and immediately start for their teams. Jordan Love is the most recent guy. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. These are three guys who were successful in the playoffs last year or have been even more successful. Mahomes has been the beneficiary of 3 Super Bowls. How much did that first year sitting on the bench how much did it do for him? So the Falcons have a chance to give Penix that opportunity, right? And if you take a look at Kirk Cousins' contract, the dead cap this year is $90 million, so that would be stupid if they moved on from him then. Next year is $65 million, slightly less stupid, but still really stupid. 2026 is, I think, the point that the Falcons can definitely move on from Cousins. His dead cap drops down to $25 million. Sounds like a lot of money in today's terms, but even just 3 seasons from now, it's not going to be that much. So, and Kirk Cousins is on the older side, definitely thinking that he's going to miss some games due to injury. And you go from plugging in a guy who's a backup that you're really expecting to maybe win every other game to plugging in Penix and still expecting competing in the playoffs. So that's how I would rationalize it if I'm a Falcons fan, but definitely hard to rationalize it if you're Kirk Cousins. So that is really all I want to talk about for them. I want to look now at who the Kansas City Chiefs picked at 28 with the Bills' trade there. They got their guy. They got Xavier Worthy out of Texas. Fastest guy on the planet right now who plays football. He set the record for the NFL Combine, 4.21 40, I think it was. So this guy's a speed demon. Stats-wise, 75 receptions last year. That was good for 3rd in the Big 12 and 29th across all college football. 1,014 receiving yards. That was good for second, let me see. Got to get my papers here. Yeah, 2nd in the Big 12 and 31st in college football. And then I want to take a look at his yards per reception. 13.5 yards per reception. That's good, but it's not as high as you'd want for a guy with that speed. So in reference, again, 13.5 yards per reception. Let me give you a look at what some other guys in this prospect pool were averaging. Marvin Harrison Jr. takes the cake with 18.1 yards per reception. Rome Odunze, 17.8, so slightly less than Harrison Jr. Brian Thomas Jr., 17.3. Troy Franklin, let's go down to him, 17.1. So they're still up in the 17-plus area. Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy's teammate, averaged 15.4 yards per reception, so about two yards better than Worthy. And then you can take a look at Malik Washington is averaging 13.0 yards per reception, so Worthy beats him out. So, there's quite a few guys in this prospect pool that did average more yards per reception than Worthy. And so, if you want him to be a guy who is a super deep threat, down the field, explosive player, he wasn't really that to the degree that you're hoping for when he was back in college. So, strengths-wise, great with the ball in his hands, right? Give him the ball, he'll make moves, he'll get open space. He's explosive, excellent ball tracking skills. That was a common consensus across a lot of draft experts. Excellent punt returner. I posted a video yesterday night of a punt return he had against BYU, and that guy showed off his speed. I mean, he made one cut, and he's gone. So the Chiefs are definitely going to benefit from him on special teams. Weaknesses. He's got a thin frame. Not great at contested catches, being physical. He's not the strongest guy. He doesn't really fight through defenders. That's just not his game, right? He's more of your speed demon. Some comparisons I saw were Tank Dell, Jamison Williams, Ted Ginn Jr. My comparison is Deshaun Jackson. Similar build, very speedy, and I think these are both guys that can really excel within roles, right? I don't see Xavier Worthy being Tyreek Hill. I don't see him reaching that elite level, but he can have a role on any team, and on this Chiefs team where he is your designated speed guy. If you can get him the ball in open space, he can do great things for your team. So That's similar to what Deshaun Jackson did. He's just got to, again, expand his game, expand his route tree to be able to be that vertical, deep threat downfield that Deshaun Jackson was really, really excellent at when he was a pro. In conclusion, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I believe that we're going to see an awesome player join the Buffalo Bills tonight, whether that's T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Odell Beckham Jr., Cooper DeJean, A.D. Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, maybe Jerzon Newton joins the defensive line. The question is, can they get 2? If they get 3, that would be insane. But I'm really looking for them to get at least 2 of these guys. So that is going to do it for this edition of Buffalo Live. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like. What do you think? What do you think about the draft last night or tonight? What do you think the Bills will do? What do you want other teams to do? Maybe you're watching this as a fan of another team. What do you want your team to do? Comment below. Last but not least, please subscribe. Helps out the channel so much. Thank you so much for watching. I'm your host, Kyle. God bless. Go Bills.